Sex, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the speculative interdimensional vehicle, Sex in Space. Its mission, to explore new points of view, to seek out fresh opinions, to boldly go where so many have gone before, and still somehow manage to totally miss the point. Subscribe to Sex in Space, wherever quality podcasts are found.
Hi there, I'm Toshi and welcome back to Sex in Space. We're here continuing to explore sex across all of its infinite dimensions. I hope everyone out there is doing splendidly. Whether you're joining us on this podcast as a newcomer or you're a seasoned voyager who has travelled with us before at Sex in Space, we're delighted to have you with us. If you're tuning in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or any other platform, we sincerely thank you for joining us. Don't forget to show your support by liking, rating and subscribing. You can also find more great Sex in Space content over on TikTok and Instagram. Just search for us using our handle at sexinspace.com. That's sexinspace.com. We really love hearing from our listeners and engaging with our community, so please feel free to reach out in any way that you like. Your feedback means the world to us. Now let's dive into an incredible interview. Dr. Jane Cherrington had the pleasure of sitting down with Morgana O'Reilly, and today I'm going to let Jane introduce our lovely guest. Let's jump in.
Today, we're delighted to have in studio the wonderful, multi-talented Morgana O'Reilly, successful actress, writer, performer, storyteller, mum of two. And she caught our attention at Sex in Space when she recently wrote and performed a solo show, Stories About My Body. And I went and saw it. Thank God I got told about it. It was beautiful, thoughtful, funny, emotional, inclusive. Unpacking of your relationship with your body, really, and a story of part of your life, using sign language, we'll come to that, phenomenal, and words, and a wonderfully embodied, sometimes naked performance, which was cool, which included tales of selling your toes in New York, which was hilarious, and we will come to that as well, diary entries, riffs on the body from boobs to birth, and trying to like your chins. And so we're really excited to have you with us today. It was a beautiful privilege to see your show.
Oh, cool.
And so, we followed up. We're like, we need to talk to this girl.
Yes. Oh, It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome.
It's great. I love talking about this stuff, as you know, because you came and watched the show.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, for those that didn't get to see the show, let's start there.
Yeah.
Can you explain for our audience what Stories About My Body is all about for you?
Well, I sort of had the show sitting in the back of my brain for a while. I remember it being kind of just a funny anecdote that I would say to friends, but one day I want to make this show, right, where the first thing I do is run on topless, because it was a joke that me and Kuda Forrester used to do when we shared a dressing room when we did a theatre show together once, where I would hoon around the dressing room pretending I was late and tits akimbo, because boobs are never treated as funny things. They're revered or sexualized, and they're silly. So speaking of which, I'm going to fix mine up. And then so I would do that, and then I'd tell the story of working at foot fetish parties, and then I'll show my birth video. And so that was kind of like this little like hilarious idea that I had. And then I made that, and I dug up my tween diaries. I kept a diary every day for only 2 years of my life, which happened to be Form 1 and Form 2, aka what is that, year 7 and 8?
I guess ages
7 and 8.
People,
yeah.
So.
But just that middle school period between primary school and high school, which I think everyone can relate to being a pretty tumultuous time. Some people of that age are really young, and some people are desperate to be grown-ups. I was desperate to be a grown-up. So I pulled those out, and one of my major memories from all of those is just writing so much hate about my body in there, like really coming to this realization, well, not even realization because that implies that it's real, but coming to this decision that my body was wrong. And I'd draw pictures of like skinny, what I wanted to be like, but what I really looked like. Oh, it was just so toxic. But then also in looking back at it, it's really innocent and sweet. There's still a child there. So those are threaded through the start. And then I just sort of have a big old rant about my body and bodies in general. And working in my industry, you just have to think about yourself externally in a different way, and have started to realize more and more about how I just actually have to keep unpacking my ideas around it, otherwise I'll get sucked up into the hysteria. And then I tell the story of working at foot fetish parties in New York where I sold my toes for money, and then I tell both birth stories and show the birth video.
Yeah, which was really cool.
So I like to joke that in the show you see everything of me except my bum crack.
Oh, right.
Which cracks me up.
Aha.
The next show is just going to be all about me bum.
All about your bottom. How fabulous.
Stories about my anus. Doesn't sound as appealing.
And so how have people responded to the show? This is big stuff, yeah?
It's so amazing. The response is magical. It's really connected. I love performing, and it gives you that anyway. But this one offers a slightly more direct access. Maybe what I assume would be similar to playing music. You know, often I think if you don't play music, you're jealous of people that do, because you wish you could have that sense of access to a person's emotional place, right? Because we all know what it's like to feel music and go, oh, just kicks you in the heart in a way that other things can't.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really lovely, and finding camaraderie and how it's made people, they agree and it has affected them. So that's amazing.
Are you still doing the show, or is that?
Yeah, it's sort of. I just did it in Hastings last week, which was really great. And yeah, it's sort of, this is a thing that I get with my shows, where I get a bit overdoing them, and I think that nobody wants to hear it anymore. You know, that, oh God, I've done it so many times, like, I'm sure, you know, it's probably just my inner critic that's like, oh, shut up. But every time, and then I do it again. My husband's always like, you know that you'll do it again and you'll love it, and I do. So I'll be doing it in Tauranga in October.
Cool.
I'm trying to organise a little Christchurch season, because my homies on Instagram would really like that. So I'd like to make that happen for them this year if possible. And then I'd like to try and turn it into a little film. You just have it, then it can live on without me as well.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that I like to say is that I just made the film that I wanted to see. Made the show I wanted to see. Made the show I needed to see. So it's as much of a mantra for me as it is everybody else, because it's not like I can just believe that stuff every hour of every day. I have to keep reminding myself.
That's the hard part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We live in a culture where you're getting constant messaging the other way.
Yeah. And I have even recently, well, I talk about this in the show, but like, if I decide to like my chin, my under chin, if I decide to love my crow's feet, if I decide that, then I'm adding to the communal opinion, which essentially is Western beauty standards, any beauty standards, are communal opinions.
Yeah, they are.
Right? So we talk about society as an external part of us a lot, but it's us still, just what happens.
Yeah.
What happens if every time I critique something, if I just go, gorgeous, really nice, what happens if I like it? Then I have added to the collective opinion something different. And that can be, opinion is catching. It's contagious, you know. So.
It can be. I guess the challenge, you know, when you think about people listening, and particularly if you've got a younger daughter, or any child you're raising, but who is in that middle school diary writing period where they're writing, or drawing thin thems, or only seeing the ugly.
Yeah.
How to put on the goggles that show the beauty. How do you, or take them off, take the cultural goggles off. How do you find beauty in a space that tells you it's not?
Well, I think there's a few folds to that idea, because there is, of course, the external input of what you're seeing in social media, movies, TV, all of that, music videos. But there is also just understanding your own sense of strength and courage and optimism in any moment, and helping. I would love to, when and if my kids come to me and say I hate my body, helping them understand that there are different layers to this. First of all, you're perfect. You're absolutely perfect, and it's fine. But if you're feeling this way, there are reasons beyond what the world is telling you. There are, like, the food that you're eating contributes to how you feel 20 minutes later.
Yeah.
And moving your body every day can just help keep your brain from eating itself. And I don't want to say diet and exercise, because those two words can be triggering. But essentially it is. Like, what you eat, what you put in your body can help your brain keep a little bit more optimistic. And moving your body when you can also help. And so I would say to them in that middle phase especially, which could help set them up for a bit longer, is like, just do stock take on yourself. And if those thoughts and feelings are coming up more, I'm more than happy to support you in ways that we can keep your brain being nice to you, because you're great, and I would never speak to you. I would never want anyone to speak to you like that. But there are things that you can do to help. We can segment these, so it's yeah.
I was reading a thing the other day that said of somebody who enjoys being naked. The cultural myth of beauty is easily turned over if you literally walk onto a nudist beach and see, this is humanity. Here are your bodies.
Totally. Right? And it's sort of like, you need that reminder, because that's the other thing I try and be aware of. And I was talking to an older woman about this the other day, who was saying that she feels she's really confident in her body, but when she's had to do a photo shoot, she works in showbiz. When she's had to do a photo shoot, especially with some younger people, or if they're sports people or something, she starts to reflect back on herself. And something that I have noticed is, and another thing to recognize, how when you are feeling vulnerable or tired, what scapegoat, who takes the hit in terms of yourself? Some people, it's their talent. They go, I suck, I shit at what I do. Other people, like myself, when I'm tired and vulnerable and not feeling super tip-top, my body will take the hit. I will start being awful to it. And understanding that. But then those reminders of physical diversity can help combat those moments that they can sort of smelling salts you out of it.
Yeah. And actually the other thing about the kind of emotional experience that we have when we give ourselves a hard time, or we tell ourselves off, I think too that being able to recognise that's very common as a human experience, to understand that everybody goes through anxiety. Everybody, most of us. There are some people who are amazingly confident or complete narcissists. However, the rest of us are busy with this little internal narrative, like, no, that doesn't look right.
Even probably the people who are, for the most part, fine, I would bet you if they're probably fine, because they're probably pretty comfortable most of the time, but as soon as they're out of their comfort zone, I bet you something will shift. They'll either become too chatty and too nice, or the other way around. Something will take the brunt of them feeling a little bit inadequate, or on the more extreme side of feeling really inadequate. And I look at the Kardashians, which obviously are huge representations of Western beauty standards, which we can dissect them for hours, but there's one of them, is it Courtney? And she's had a lot of work, a lot of obvious, very hardcore work. And she was the one who was known as, she was a bit more curvy, and But I feel for her because in my darkest moments, if I had had the money,
Oh, yeah.
I would have done things because I thought that would have fixed it.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like,
You want to do it, go for it.
Yeah.
All I would say is unpack it a little bit.
where's it coming from? What's
Yes.
the driver?
Is it really going to make everything better? Also, is it going to make you look weirder in 10 years? But
I remember when I was little, you know, you put your arms around your granny or your aunties or whatever, and they were just your grannies or your aunties. You loved them. They were gorgeous, and you never noticed their
No.
age or shape or
no.
that, it just wasn't there.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe kids notice faster now, but we are so ageist.
Oh, totally. And these archetypes that are, I feel some hope in there being physical diversity being highlighted more within the realms of woman, as much as there has been within the realm of man. And I really got a sense of that watching the women's rugby and seeing that sports team, that lineup of women who are all different shapes and sizes. Depending on their job in the team, they had a different body type that was
Yeah.
important for that. And they were all absolute top of their field, high-end athletes, but did not look like penthouse models because that is just this one type of woman's body. So maybe with more women's sports playing a huge
Yeah, that's interesting.
role in some female physical diversity. So you're not just one, and then when your body changes and your face changes, that all of a sudden you're kicked out of that group and you were just deemed
Yeah,
not.
yeah. Healthy bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And happy faces
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
beautiful lines and lovely
Yeah,
bumps
yeah.
and, you know. Yeah.
Lovely bumps. So you went offshore.
Mm-hmm.
Talk us through this, because it's the
Oh,
most
yeah.
extraordinary OE in terms of
Oh, it was a great OE. I took myself travelling all through 2009, essentially. I went to 17 countries in 8 months.
Oh my god.
I know, it was so good. The audacity of youth, eh? I think I was
Yeah.
23 and turned 24 on the way. I went through Europe for 3 months and up through South America for 2 months, and then into the States for another, you do the math, months. And I finished it all, and I was on my own predominantly. Obviously, I made lots of friends along the way and met up with people. But at the end, I ended up in New York and definitely needed to make an airfare home. I decided it was time to go home. I was pretty keen on just Kiwi summer,
Right.
and it had been a long time. And so, but I had been told by everybody, oh, you'll find under the table work in New York. No worries at all. Like, everybody works in bars for, for cash. And I tried for ages. I'd walked and then was told that because it was the recession, like, everyone
Right.
was looking for work and there was no work. So this is, 2009. I don't know if I said that. So I finally, this is totally just word for word of the show now, but I finally found a cafe in the East Village that would pay me $2.50 per hour plus tips. And in the weekend, no dollars, nothing per hour plus tips. So that was fine. But then, so my Craigslist searches started to get weirder. And Craigslist, if you don't know, is kind of like Gumtree or Trade Me, And in the end, I found an ad. I looked for nanny work. Everybody wanted somebody more long-term, which fair enough. I looked at some other things, and they did start to get crept into a weirder space. And there was totally a part of me that was like, could I strip? I just didn't think I had quite the confidence for it. And then I found this ad that said, foot worship parties, no funny business can make up to $300 per night.
That's awesome.
I know. I was like, oh my gosh, my feet, they're the only part of my body I've consistently liked. So
It's a small area, but okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I did tap dance. They're weird. It's the weird thematic link in there's feet. And then also, side note, since doing this, the internet has noticed my nice feet from being on TV shows. They don't even know that I used to work in foot fetish parties, but I'm on
you
Wiki
mean there's no
Feet.
link?
No, there's no there's no link. Like, it just, they've taken
brilliant.
screen grabs from anything
So validation.
They're good feet. But yeah, so I went in for a casting. They invited me in for a casting, and then I got to work the party that night. And so it would be every Wednesday night on the Bowery in the Lower East Side, and I'd go down and you have to work the room. So it was something that I had to get good at. At first, I was way too chatty. Like if you're chatting with someone, it's $20 every 10 minutes. But you have to be sitting with them for a session, with your foot in their mouth. But if you're just chatting and asking questions, it's not going to work, which I did for the first one. I was like, oh my gosh, tell me all about it. And you had to tip out $50, so I begged them to let me keep it and promised to come back and earn more. And then I started to get quite good at it, which was great. There's a really specific kind of pride in walking to the subway at 3 a.m. in your heels with a bra full of American cash. Getting your subway home being like, yes, I am so nasty and awesome.
And my cash is safe.
Yeah, totally.
I'm upper cup size.
Yeah, I've upper cup size, that's right.
I would say it's one of the more unusual lines of sex work that we've had on Sex in Space,
right.
which is cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Because there's a part of me as well, like I think for most people that's like pretty way out, but it was great to have an insight into that world and realize that I know just like the tip of the iceberg, but lovely to get an insight into a more specific kink that, fair enough, go for it.
It's awesome. I think it's really, as always go, it's right up there.
Yeah, good.
And so when you were at middle school and not comfortable with your own body, from then to now, are there pivotal moments on the way that allowed you to really take stock and say, hang on a minute?
I think one of the there's been lots of things that have contributed. Like I did tap dancing growing up, which was pretty loose and relaxed and lovely, but then every year we would do an exam, which is fine, but we all had to wear a blue leotard, and as we got older we would have to wear flesh coloured stockings under the blue leotard that would then cut into the flesh so you'd see the line, just things that made me aware. And then I would lose weight and put it back on, and frequently throughout from my late teens, 20s, and became very aware of how the world treated me at different stages. So I became very articulate of that, or at least just in the way I was projecting out, because it could also have been said that because I felt like I looked right, I was more confident. And then I think maybe it was after having a baby and just being a bit older and having to unpack it a bit more, so it wasn't as losing weight was not as accessible an idea as it used to be when it was just me on my own and I could restrict calories and ride my bike every day.
Right.
When you've got a baby, you can't do that. And also had to think about how I was going to respond if she or when she was going through the same things. Yeah. So those were some, and then still figuring it out. Yeah.
It's a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what shape, size. Really.
Yeah, that's
Again,
right.
back to
right.
There are a little slither of people who are fine, and the rest of us have to work it out on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
And so, with having little ones, how old are the babies?
8, pretty much 8
Not
in
a
a
baby.
few weeks, and nearly 5 in October.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not babies at all. With 8, I'm writing a book at the moment, how to talk with your kids about porn.
Oh, amazing. I need to know all about it.
Well, and so part of it, of course, really, it's a Trojan horse, because it's a book about how to have conversations with your kids about sex. It's a backfiller for those of us that came through school without much for sex education, which is most parents. But I would say the big call out for parents is self-educate. Become the circuit breaker, because we cannot lean in on schools. Apart from anything else, those poor teachers, most of them came in the same path as us, don't have sex ed. And there they are,
right.
facing a sea of expectant kids, and they're not that much older. It's hard,
right.
you know. So,
and each school's going to have a different ethos around it, so you can't rely on them.
And pleasure is still not in the curriculum.
Yes, I actually do know. I have a really strong memory, being at Ponsonby Intermediate School, being in a sex ed class, which probably comparatively was pretty progressive, even though it was still very clinical. And I remember we'd been taken through the mechanics, and I remember putting up my hand, and I still look back at that young Morgs and go like, good on you, girl, because I put up my hand after being, and I was like, so, you've explained that there is a clitoris and there is a hole, but like they're not, how is that going to work? And it took that question for the teacher to explain that theoretically the top of the pubic bone above the penis is supposed to rub against it. But like, I would have never, because they are not next to each other,
Well, and that kind of brings up a beautiful guest we had recently. Her mission in life is to unpack this idea in Western culture that sex is about penetration.
Right.
Because there's 4% of women are orgasmic through penetrative sex.
Is it only
and
4?
And the rest of them.
Yeah.
So sex is definition, and
Totally.
particularly for our kids, needs to be widened out. It's about pleasure.
Yes.
It's about desire and arousal and enjoying.
And play with another
play.
person.
Yeah.
I heard a talk a while ago where this woman had sort of noted that a lot of her interviews with queer girls, where they acknowledge losing your virginity as the first time you have an orgasm with a partner.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's great.
Yes.
I loved thinking back on that first moment for me, and was like, oh, I'd love to think about that as losing my virginity in that point.
Yeah.
And I think same for both parties involved in having sex. If you can't brag that you've popped someone's cherry if you haven't made sure they've had a good time.
Well, that's right. And also, as our guest said, why is it that we're losing something?
Oh my God, totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it that first time we gained that experience of sexual pleasure?
Totally.
And the first time our cherry got ripe, maybe.
Yeah, you can't pop a cherry anyway. Don't you know how cherries work?
There's a lot of work to do, for sure.
Yeah, or just waking up, isn't it? Or understanding it, like you say, you don't lose something. And yeah. But I look forward to having a more continued conversation with my daughter. And because I was so, I got into it too early, like looking back. Like I lost my virginity when I was 13.
It's very young.
It's really young. And I really am only now really understanding the kind of, the price of that and how it affects my own sexuality. And that sucks.
How would you, for other young women that are thinking about whether or not to have sex at an early age,
Yeah.
What is the price of that for you? How do you understand that?
I think maybe I could have explored, because it's not to say I wasn't horny, and it's not to say I loved all of a sudden, because again, I had just lost a bunch of weight, and all of a sudden all these boys liked me, which they hadn't. And I was like a kid in a candy store, and it was so nice to feel desired. I don't know, is it about even just understanding that, enjoying being flirtatious and kissing and things like that? But you can't rewrite those first few times. Also, this might be too much for a young person to hear, but like, you start writing your own little kink book at that time, don't you? So the things that really turn you on around then, I mean, you can see why the schoolgirl uniform is such a big deal, because everyone was only just starting to get horny around that time. So it threads itself into your little your little guidebook for what you specifically find really hot, and also the things that you find ick. And it can just start writing those pages too early and lock something in as something that really grosses you out.
I like that unpacking, though. I think it's not too much to hear. I think it's great to have like a kink and ick. You know, what turns me on and what am I not up for. And maybe it's about going, hey girl, whatever age you are, or hey young person, it can be any gender, whatever age you are. You know, if it's even vaguely ick, say no.
Yeah.
You know, you're allowed to write your book as early as you want in terms of what's out.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's like, and a lot of sexy stuff is unspoken. We're all trying to be more vocal with consent and talking about what's happening. But a lot of also the fun of it is it's a non-verbal communication. But it can mean that you can sort of like get yourself into a position, literally, that you go, oh damn it, I don't actually like this. This is it, but here I am. Yeah.
I guess this generation coming through, is being given permission to say, even in a position sexual that they don't want to be in, to say, you know what, actually I want to stop.
Yeah.
That's new.
Yeah. You have to understand it, though, don't you? To say, I think, because when I was 13, I was basically talked into giving a blowjob, but I didn't really understand it.
Right.
And then I remember him going, oh, just for a second, you know, just really quickly. Okay. And then, of course, he came immediately in my mouth, which I wasn't. It felt like a gas going off. It was really unpleasant. And I was like... But it's changed the way I felt about oral sex with penises.
It wasn't a great start?
No, I never wanted to do it again. It was really not a good start. And actually, it was a little damaging. I mean, he was...
being able to explore it in your own time.
And that was the thing, is like, it was ick, but it was too late to realise it was ick. I was like, oh, damn it. Oh, damn.
I know, this whole area is closed to me for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that, you know, that where do we learn? How do we learn? Were there any good resources that you came across, books, films, websites, anything, when you were growing up, where you were like, oh, yeah, that's great?
Nah, I mean, I was just sort of piecing it together. I do remember a wonderful moment with my mum. But this, I think, is also indicative of how the role of the quote-unquote auntie could be really useful as well. Like, it doesn't always have to be a parent. Right. But I remember her saying to me, she goes, Morgan, I just want you to know, because I would have been like 12. She goes, I just want you to know, you know, it's really... when you start masturbating, like, I just want you to know that it's really natural. And I was like, ooh, yeah, no, I'm never going to masturbate. Gross. She was like, yeah, but you will. And when you do, I just want you to know. And I was like, no, I never will. And she goes, yeah, but you will. And when you do, I just want you to know it's really natural. And I just was like, no. And then I could remember that I reckon I held off for like an extra 2 months just because I didn't want her to be right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, damn it. And but I wonder if... And not to say, I mean, Mum, bless her, good on her. She should absolutely have talked to me about that. But maybe if she'd enlisted another grown-up that like an auntie or something. Yeah. It could have hit, I've thought about this a lot, of your experience as a heterosexual female. You're not called on much, historically speaking, to think of your sexuality as part of your being, where it's something... which I may look at people who identify as LGBTQI+, or even just men, heterosexual men, with envy, that even though I know that the LGBTQI community have been persecuted for their sexuality, but in its best moments, it's part of their being. A heterosexual woman's sexuality, in my perception of it, is externalized and is... an observed thing. So I think a lot of what I viewed my sexuality as was just about being nice to look at, being sexy, performative. and I did a workshop with my friend who was a tantric sex therapist years ago, and like
Awesome.
10 years ago. It was so great. And it was so great because it was this whole day where we were being called as people to explore our sexuality. That didn't mean having sex.
Mm-hmm.
It just meant explore that side of yourself. And I think that was a real revelation of like that.
Amazing.
And it sort of relates to that idea of like, what do you like? Instead of like, someone touches me and then you go, oh, you know.
Yeah. Performance.
It's performance, which is a good time
Mm-hmm.
if you can use that to turn you on again. But yeah, that was a big revelation.
So that's in answer to the earlier question, in terms of resources that have been used for a tantric sex workshop.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
definitely, that was great.
Sign up for one of those.
Oh yes, Shani Marie, she's great. Look at her on Instagram.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
And so, if you were looking back at your middle school girl self,
Yeah.
what advice would you give yourself from this vantage point?
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because part of me goes, nothing. Look, she just had to learn what she had to learn, and here I am today, and I probably wouldn't be talking about it if I had been enlightened enough at the time. I definitely think about what I can offer my children when they are that age, in terms of what we've talked about, compartmentalizing your feeling of dissatisfaction with yourself into that of your cerebral health, how your physical informs it, how good food, good mood, and then unpacking what is our collective opinion on what makes for somebody who's nice to look at. The advice I'd give myself was learn how to do your tax.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us today.
thank
It's
you.
been amazing. Those of you who get the opportunity to go and see the show, 100%. But also, those of you that don't wait for the film, I'm serious. It's beautiful, and it's the potential as a resource is incredible. So, for those of you that aren't sure about how to start those conversations, that type of stuff is a great way to start the conversation.
We really hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. You can find Morgana on Instagram at Morgana O'Reilly, or you can search for her on Facebook, where you can also find tickets to her show, Stories About My Body, which she will be performing in October in Tauranga. It's definitely not a show to be missed. Before we sign off, we want to remind you to check out our book, available at sexandspace.com/book, or simply search for The Organ Education Forgot on Amazon. We also have a downloadable PDF version available, which is $8 New Zealand dollars, and you can find that on our website too. Don't forget to leave a like, follow, comment, or review wherever you're tuning in from. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, safe travels, and see you on the next episode.